Right, good afternoon. I'm almost recovered from the little trip to the Balding Reefers last night. Almost. I'm currently sat in the kiddies' playroom, so if you get any background noise, you have to deal with it. Kids will be kids. Dogs are charging round. Look at that lovely blue sky out there. It's like a lovely spring day. All the water piggies are doing fantastically. They're having a little munch. What I wanted to do is I wanted to touch on something that came up in the live last night, just in a little more detail than was last night. And my view on this is possibly a little controversial. The question was asked in the live about netting fish out in winter, and was it okay to do it? And I'm going to go into a little bit about netting out in general. It's for me something I do as little as possible. And this is my view on my experience. I'm going to give my opinion on it. I'm not criticising anyone, but I'm going to give my opinion on why I do it the way I do it. And I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos over the last 12 months. And what I notice is a lot of people seem to be netting out their fish what I would deem to be unnecessarily. If a fish flashes once, they've got it out the pond. If it's got one raised scale, they've got it out the pond. They don't seem to let nature do its thing. Let's take flashing. Fish flash. Always have, always will. The same as I've got an itch on my nose here now. I'll give it a scratch, and a fish's way of scratching is to have a flash. Now, if a fish is flashing consistently, and it's flashing a lot, and now a lot is subjective. If I see a fish flash 5, 6, 7 times in a row, then I'll pay a little bit more attention to it. If I then see a few more fish flashing, I'll then start to think about getting the fish out and doing some scrapes and seeing if there's anything lurking in the pond. If I see it flash once, I'll let it crack on. 9 times out of 10 it's an itch, it's an irritation. Now, in my opinion, when you net a fish out, it damages it. End of story. And someone said to me on the live, have you ever been fishing? Well, yeah, I used to fish a lot in my youth. And no, I never thought when I was hooking out a common carp and netting it out and taking it out and putting it back in that would be detrimental to the fish. But a koi isn't a common carp. A koi is if you like, pedigree. It's interbred, and it's interbred over generations and generations to breed in the colours and the patterns and the things that we like. And especially with a Deutz fish, it's had its armour removed, it's had all its scales taken off. And they're weak. They are, if you know anything about interbreeding of any species, the more you interbreed it, the more weaknesses you bring up in that animal. So koi have a relatively weak immune system compared to a common carp in a lake. So when you net a fish out, you remove or damage some of the slime coat, and that can be quite a lot of the slime coat if you've got it laying flat in a net and then you're doing scrapes as well. you're actually physically removing the slime coat. And the slime coat is the fish's primary defence against anything, be it bacteria, parasites, anything. And one of the first things you notice with a lot of sick fish is that their slime coat becomes much heavier. And that is their immune system going, right, we're going to try and protect ourselves. Now in winter, when the fish's metabolic rate, because as we all know they're cold-blooded, they rely on the water temperature to start their metabolism off. When the metabolic rate is low, that slime coat production is reduced, so they're left vulnerable for a longer time. But on the plus side to that, in the colder water, parasites are pretty much dormant, bacteria are pretty much dormant, so they're under less of an attack. So it's a swings and roundabouts situation. On the converse side, in spring, summer, where their metabolic rates and they're waking up and they're getting more active, their feeding will increase, their ability to repair their slime coat is a lot higher, and slime coats are replaced a lot faster, which is great. But with the warmer water you also get more activity with parasites, more activity with bacteria, so again it's a swings and roundabouts situation. So my thoughts on it is net your fish out as little as possible. Let the ecosystem that you develop in your pond deal with a lot of the things. And if you notice really lots of erratic behaviour, lots of flashing, then start playing about with it. But the more you can leave your fish alone, the more you can leave them in the water, the more you can let them get on with being fish, in my opinion, the better. Now, I know there's a lot of koi keepers out there that have got very expensive fish. I know there's a lot of koi keepers out there that are in it to document the growth and the changes and photograph and do the growth rates and everything else. And as I say, it's each to their own way of doing things. My way is to bring them out when there's obviously a problem, not trying to preempt a situation, and by trying to preempt that situation you actually introduce a problem. So you might see a fish flash, you might net it out, you might do a scrape, you remove that slime coat, you open the fish up to parasites can get a hold easier, and you create that problem of parasites being able to latch on and breed like wildfire and actually help the parasites in their journey of being in the pond. So it's a 6 of one, half dozen the other. But to compare a common carp to a koi, to me, is like comparing chalk and cheese. You're comparing old Dobbin in the field to a pedigree racehorse. And if you know anything about horses, you'll know that a pedigree racehorse, there you go, I'm flashing again, you'll know that a pedigree racehorse is far more fragile than the rag and bone man's nag. So it's just some food for thought and a different perspective. And I know a lot of people won't agree with what I'm saying, but unless these different perspectives are brought up and talked about, then you don't have the alternatives. Up until a couple of years ago, and this will give you an idea of why I do it the way I do it, I hadn't done a water test for 15 years. I'd never netted my pond, never netted the fish out until I had a problem with the pond and I had to net them out and had to replace the liner on the old pond. But I hadn't netted my fish out ever. I'm not obsessed with growth. I'm not obsessed with pattern changes. I'm not obsessed with having extremely expensive, perfect fish. Don't get me wrong, I do like lovely fish, I do like big fish, but I'm not particularly worried if it's grown 3 centimetres this year or 10. I'm not into forcing growth, I'm not into forcing colour or anything like that. It's just my way of doing it. I have the fish for the pure enjoyment of the fish, not to be in a competition. Having said that, I have just bought 2 fish in a growing show. So yeah, but that's more for the fun of it than anything else. I wanted a goshki. Some goshki came up in a growing show. Growing show gives you a good price, 9 times out of 10, and it's a cost-effective way of doing it and a bit of fun into the bargain. But I'm not heated. I've got an in-ground unheated pond, so I'm never going to get massive growth rates out of fish anyway. But it's just my thought. It was something that I was thinking about on the drive home, which gave me a few hours to think about it. Basically, trying to keep myself awake. And I thought I'd do a quick video, just with my thoughts and my take on it, from a different perspective. And for all you guys with Windows, you got the upper hand in this game, because you can see so much more with what's going on, and see every little thing, which gives you the upper hand. But I think it's also somewhat detrimental, because you do see all these things that you wouldn't normally see from the top, and that can cause an overreaction of, oh no, it's got a pink mark, or it's a bit veiny, or whatever it is, and all of a sudden people are netting their fish out because it's a bit veiny. If you've ever seen fish that have been transported over a long distance when you first take them out of the bag, if you've ever had a fish in a bag for 4, 5, 6 hours, or if you've ever been involved in when they come in from Japan, the amount of veining that you see that disappears after a couple of days is amazing. In fact, you get bags with fish full of blood where their gills have been bleeding, and it's stressful and it's detrimental, but it's not something that you're gonna have to net the fish out every time. You know it's there, you know it's stress. If your water parameters are bang on, 9 times out of 10, it's just having a bit of a stressful day. But if it continues over a period of days or a week or whatever, probably worthwhile having a look at it a bit closer. But yeah, I think there's a lot of overreaction, and I can understand that if you've invested a lot of money in a fish, if you've invested 2, 3, 4,000 pounds in a fish, or even if you've invested 5, 6, 700 pounds in a fish, I can understand that you might be a little bit more cautious about what's going on in the pond. But if you spent that sort of money on a fish, then your setup should be absolutely bang on before you're putting fish in there, and you should be monitoring your setup, as most people do, every week, to make sure everything stays bang on. Before last year, I haven't medicated a fish in 20 odd years, in all seriousness. And it's only because of that massive fluke problem we've had in the last couple of years that I've had to do something. But before that, I think I've probably, in the last 20 years, medicated the pond about 3 times. I've never had a fish out as such, apart from, as I say, when I had to strip the pond down. So it's just another angle, just another thought on it. Goes back to what I've heard many times on Koi Wholesale's Live. Keep it simple, and it really is keep it simple. You know, let the ecosystem do what the ecosystem does, and as long as you're maintaining that ecosystem and you're maintaining your filter maintenance and you're maintaining your water changes and all that sort of thing, you really shouldn't have many problems. And I think YouTube has been somewhat detrimental in that people seem to think pulling a fish out every few days is actually better for it than leaving it in the pond. I kind of disagree, but anyway, I'm going to finish this little waffle, and I think I'm going to go out to the pond and enjoy the fish for a bit. Ciao.